wanting to know about the earliest creative work you remember writing.
Oh, great question. Man, great question. My mom had some poems from like when I was little, like a poem or two that I wrote for, I don't know, Mother's Day or something. But I'm thinking about, me and my friends were always like messing around, like writing parodies of like, I talk about this enough that it's boring to me, but I didn't read a lot as a kid. And but there were these places where, but I was catching stuff. And so me and my friends would make like parodies of the stuff that we were reading. So I remember, we did what's that Steinbeck, the famous Steinbeck book everyone reads?
Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's like, is that the right one?
Yeah. And so I remember I didn't read it, but somehow I heard enough in class to like do this parody of it, and my buddy found that. I don't know, it probably is nothing that I want to share
in the world. Yeah,
exactly. But like that kind of stuff. It was mainly, most of it, was playing around, most of my early literary efforts. And in retrospect, I'm like, oh, you were doing the same shit that you're interested in now. Like was playing around, goofing off, not doing what I was supposed to be doing. I feel like so often that's what, I want to sort of often be like with the kids who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, be like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, partly because I was that kid.
That's lovely. I guess kind of staying maybe with the kid version or maybe the older version of self. Is there a character, literary or film character, that you wish was like a real life person that you could have on speed dial, that you could call up whenever you wanted to talk through a thing? And if like whoever comes to mind, I just would be curious if you could tell us more about that person, why that's your person.
That's so good. That's a great question. God, who would that be? There's a character in a book by Jamaica Kincaid called The Autobiography of My Mother, whose name is slipping out of my head right now. It's up here on a shelf somewhere. But that is a character who is a complex, like a real character who's not just likable, but who's someone who it would kind of be fun to like take a walk with, but I've never thought of that before though. So I don't think of that like that. Let's see, who else? I have bookshelves up here. I'm like, who up there do I want to hang out with?
And it could be film as well, like if that feels more evocative for you.
Like cartoon, fantasy. Or we move in a different direction.
Yeah, there's this movie, Bob. I wonder if you remember this movie. It was called The Animal Olympics.
Oh yeah.
Oh. You remember that?
Oh, totally. All of them.
Yeah, there's some characters in there that, even as I just thought it, and I just thought of like the song that the kids played, or that the theme songs to some of the like athletic events. I just had a little feeling of like, I was just moved.
I'm gonna have to look this up now.
You gotta look it up. It's a little bit before you, but
at least the theme song.
Oh my God.
All right. Well, you just looked at your shelf. So if you look at that shelf, when you look back up there, who are the writers, who are the people, the writers on that shelf that speak to you? You look at them and that like you look at their names and you get a charge.
Mhm. Morrison is up there. Jamaica Kincaid's up there. John Edgar Wideman's up there. I have a stack of Chris Kraus books up there. I have a bunch of Biley Miles up there. There's that big Bolaño book, that 2666666,
Yeah.
that I have not read, but
that no one has read. No one has read.
Yeah, I'm curious. But there's John up there. Kincaid, Morrison, Weideman. Those are like three of the folks who are just, I never stop being fascinated and like reading them and learning something that I never, not only did I not learn before, but I never probably thought would be a thing to learn, Like I'm learning what is possible to learn all the time when I'm reading their work. And I'm in a deep John Edgar Wideman phase right now, kind of going back through some of his work and catching up on some stuff that I didn't read. And I can't believe the work that he's made for us. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, I mean, we know so much part of our writing process is reading and how that fuels our work. But we got to get down to actually putting the pen or the pencil or the crayon or the fingers to paper. And so I wondered if you could talk to us about any writing rituals you may have, any things that you find yourself like having to do when you actually are writing. Do you have, a food or beverage nearby? Do you have to write during a certain time of day or night? Do you have to use a specific writing utensil? Like what's your writing? What are your writing rituals?
I'm really not ritually. So I'll say that. I mean, not in life. I mean, I'm pretty ritually in life. My writing rituals they're not real fixed. That being said, I get into grooves with certain kinds of pens, and certain kinds of paper. So I'm always fine to work on an envelope. It's fine. And sometimes I'm a little bit like the less precious it is, the more magic it can kind of be, actually. But like I have these Le Pens that I that I like, and I'm really serious about notebooks. And again, it could, whatever I have. A lot of times I'm just writing, scratching stuff on whatever's around. I'm like, you're kind of looking at me in my space because I'm like looking for like evidence. So here it is.
Yeah.
But like, here's a notebook. It's pretty nice. It's a pretty nice notebook, but it's a hand-bound notebook, and it's okay. It's line paper. It's okay. I remember that's why I didn't stay with it. I like line paper, but there's a kind of texture that I want, and the texture, I think it actually has to meet up with certain kinds of pens, the kinds of pens that I use, like Le Pens And so I am actually that person in the paper store who's touching every single notebook. Like I'm not just looking at the notebook. I'm running my finger over every single notebook. Which
that's very Linda Berry. It's very Linda.
Oh, is Linda Berry like that?
Yeah, and she's very like she doesn't like to write on it. When she does these exercises, she has you draw an X through the page before you even write anything, because it makes it less, makes it less intimidating. Then
totally.
Then it's like, all right, well, the page is already damaged.
Yes.
So whatever you do to it isn't going to.
You're not going to.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I just want to say too, Linda Berry is over there on the shelf down there.
She's on there too.
There's that book Syllabus, and then the other one, Demons, something about Demons. But yeah, here's Linda Berry right here. I was just looking at this the other day. Her stuff like really sort of influences me. Yeah. How I teach actually too.
Yeah, her playing. Well, that was what I was going to ask you about your teaching, because I mean, I feel like Lauren and I know the answer to this question, and partly because of just seeing you introduce Lauren at her reading the other day. But um, can you talk about what you get out of teaching? And what you get out of workshops in particular?
Yeah, so the way that I do workshop is different than like a workshop. What we think of as a traditional workshop. To me, I'm like, I have a poster here. I'm gonna show you this poster. This is adults, right? It's okay to have like a naughty word,
Sure.
a word that's not too naughty.
Sure.
You could just put a thing over it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the thing that I'm trying to do in my classes. And so my classes, which are not my classes, which is us, and so the way that I sort of think of a classroom as a place where we gather, we sort of get our questions in the air, and we start sort of collaborating to figure out how to, illuminate or deepen or problematize our questions. And so that might look like it will never in my class look like, oh, you should break the line there instead of there. It will never look like that. What it might look like is, three of us getting together and making puppets and making a puppet play in 20 minutes and then having to perform it. And then someone doing an interpretive reversal play of the same thing, something like that. Like, what I'm interested in is trying to sort of actually dislodge our mastery and dislodge even our aspiration toward mastery as a way toward like coming to something that we never thought we could have made, So which means that every time I teach, now that I teach like this, every time I teach, I'm teaching, you're just with it. I witness people make things that are more beautiful than anything I could ever imagine, and that I could never have like coached someone up on making. I could never have been like, oh, if you just put this part here and that part there, and then like put in two images, like, no, I could never, So that's kind of how I think about it. You said, what do I get out of it? You can kind of tell what I get out of it by the way I talk about it. I get very happy.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens at the conference. I mean, I see this happen all the time. Just what you're describing, people coming here and making things that they weren't expecting to, and reading things out loud. And particularly, I'm thinking of a moment with Linda Berry and Dan Shawn when they were here, and they were able to coax out of people, coax out of conference participants, just by playing in the classroom.
Yeah.
And you're teaching this class, that will be participatory, so people will be making while they're in class. And I guess just to piggyback off of the previous question, what for you makes a class like successful or impactful, a kind of class like that where you're making, it's a one-time class, people are coming to the conference to work with Ross Gay and figure out what's that all about. What do you feel like would make that successful?
Yeah. There's all kinds of things. One would be that if there was sort of some kind of flourishing of care that actually happened in the space, that would be the most important thing, really. But if there was some, which might be like some close listening that happened in the workshop. But the things that are like markers of like things are happening is like laughter often. Laughter laughter in my classes. Also people like, really surprising themselves, writing things and just being like, what is that? Or making a thing, or being moved by something that someone else has written for them, you know? Because part of what I also try to do is sort of, you know, this, Lauren, like the gift is sort of part of the circuitry of the classes that we do, you know, giving each other things. So making things for each other, listening to each other, and then maybe making something out of that listening. So yeah, so a successful class for me would be that care happened, listening happened, laughter happened, and probably something that you wouldn't have made otherwise happen, you know, and something that maybe you love, you know, that you wouldn't have made otherwise, something like that.
Which is it's amazing advice. So I wonder what advice, do you remember the best advice you got as a writer? Like what took you to this place?
Mm.
There's been so much. I mean, there's been like Marie Howe was one of my teachers. And she said, I remember one time she said to me, and I will never forget it. And Lauren, you've probably heard me say it, but I was writing something just like sort of, I was making it convoluted, you know, and it wasn't, you know, sometimes difficulty is a necessary thing. And this was like an unnecessary difficulty. And she said, what are you trying to do here? And I said, well, what are you trying to say? I said, blah, blah, blah. And she said, why don't you just say that? And it was the best. It was like, oh, you can just say it. You don't have to pretend to be a writer. You can just write, you know? That was wonderful, wonderful advice. But then, you know, there are teachers like Toy Derricott, who has been a dear friend and mentor over the years, and who has surely said tons of things that have been really important to me, but has just modeled a kind of attempting to witness oneself with such clarity and softness. Like, I don't know anyone who does it better than Toy Derricott, and I've been lucky enough to, she's over there. Two of her books all the time. I mean, her poems up over here, but her book, The Black Notebooks, anytime I see a copy of that, I buy it. To give away. But that sort of steady, persistent willingness to really think about oneself with care, but with honesty, is so moving to me. I really don't know, like the work that she did in the Black Notebooks, but also in I mean, all of her work, really, all of her work. But the Black Notebooks is formative. I was like 22, 23 when I read it, and then I reread it every 5 years, and then now I reread it more often. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without it.
Wow, that's tremendous. Well, I mean, part of the doing and part of the labor is also rewriting and editing and revising. And there's that part beyond just the initial making. And I wondered if you could share with us a little bit about how you approach the editing process or revision process, if that's different for you. You know, if you let your work sit for a certain period of time before you look at it, if you share it with friends to offer feedback, if there's some things that you kind of keep close to the vest, like how would you describe what happens after you make a thing?
Yeah, there's at least a couple ways it works. As you were formulating the question, I was sort of thinking, yeah, there's a couple ways that happens. One is that I sometimes will kind of I'm a little bit like, people ask in terms of rituals too, like some people, they do it every day, 3 hours in the morning. And Bob, you might be more like that. You might be more like, do you get it in every morning or something?
No, not COVID year.
Okay. But I feel like I remember. Anyway, people having like
I was doing, yeah, I did when I was doing the memoir, yeah.
Okay. But you know, I'm not, when I wrote that Book of Delights, I was like that, but more I'm sort of, I get hooked and I go hard, go. And then it sort of rests. Sometimes my revision process is in that kind of, I'm just turning it over. And that could be like grinding on a poem, draft it, and then just grinding on it for a while. And always, I'm going to say 99.5% of the time, part of my process is to send to my beloved readers, you know. And um, and if I do draft a thing and then put it away, and then take it back out, which I also do sometimes, it will also always be part of the process to send it to beloved readers. So that's that. The other thing I want to say about revision, though, is that, you know, the more I revise, the more I write, and the more I revise. I love revision, and I love it because it's just like trying to tell the truth. You know, for me, it's like how you try to make this thing as true as possible.
Mm.
And that doesn't, you know, doesn't necessarily, there's not an easy answer to that, you know, like truth is this other thing, you know, and, you know, to revise whatever it is you're trying to make, but to sort of like go back into a thing or try to, for me, it's almost always breaking a thing open to find what it has sort of shown me that I do not yet know how to hear. Find those little fissures or whatever, boom, and then crack them and then see what happens, see what's there, see what the poem's teaching me. So there is, in revision, we think of it often as like, we're getting in there, and, but often revision is a kind of like submission to something, you know, that's my experience of it. So that in a way, the revision process is more magical and more wild in a way than the generative process for me.
Yeah. We have I think just a couple more questions, but you know, one of them is I'm kind of stuck. I feel like we could talk about this all day. But what's your post-COVID dream travel destination? If we're going to move into the future and you get to go, so where are you going next? When you get to take off, where are you going to go?
Go to a basketball court around here.
You stay local.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, eventually, you know, see my mother and stuff. But yeah, I'm not like, I'm not.
That's it. That's what you
yeah,
get. The basketball court. I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
It's really put it in a really high relief, hasn't it? Like what we miss, like what we want to go back to.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
So you're always balancing lots of different things, you know, you're teaching, you're writing, you're in community, you know, you're gardening, you're nourishing, you're doing things for so many beloveds, and also sharing, collaborating on different projects. How do you balance it all? How do you manage all of your different types of deadlines?
I have someone who helps me with my dates and stuff, and that might be the real answer to that. You know, I have someone who helps me with my calendar. So when things come in, I send them along to Vaughn, and Vaughn helps me out, you know, and it's just a good friend and a good interlocutor too. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of, I mean, I have support, you know, and then there's also the other things of like, you know, I have a job that gives me a little time to do stuff, you know, and, you know, that kind of stuff too. So there's certain ways, like if I had, you know, a couple little kids running around and some other stuff, I think it might be a little tricky. I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be doing this. Yeah, I'd be doing something else.
Nice. Okay, I think we're at maybe the last question, or the kind of outro question. We talked a little bit about advice earlier that had been given to you that was really impactful. What might you leave with emerging writers who are trying to find their way and try to find their aesthetic and their voice? What would be kind of the thing that you would say to them?
I would say a couple things, probably some like, you know, honor your questions or something, you know, care for your questions, let them guide you, and study what you love. That's what I'd say. Yep.
Oh, that's a perfect endpoint. Study what you love.
That's what I'm gonna go do right now.
What you about to go study, Bob?
And just do whatever Ross said. I'm gonna
I thought
read all those writers again and just do whatever Ross says. That's everyone should do.
I thought you were going to be referencing like some banana bread, because remember how we used to bake?
Oh yeah, remember that? Yeah.
Remember those days?
Remember those days?
Thank you so much, Ross. This is really
Ross.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Thank you for everything.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, can't wait. Really looking forward to this summer.